What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with another look at how to attack these high-risk best ball 12-man league draft contests like Best Ball Mania 4 on Underdog Fantasy. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you should approach your draft if you are starting from the 10th, 11th, or 12th positions to end the first round. This is the final video in our series on how to attack the draft from any starting slot you can get. So you'll be able to watch these videos all summer long right up until the contest closes and the NFL season starts. In the last video, we wrapped up by looking at how to draft a team from the number 9 position, and the consensus number 9 overall pick is Austin Ekeler of the Los Angeles Chargers, going a little ahead of that at 8.9 now. So the consensus number 10 overall pick is actually Bijan Robinson, the rookie first-round draft pick of the Atlanta Falcons. So that is who I have queued up as my selection in the first round from pick number 10. So the Atlanta Falcons have a very interesting schedule in the playoff slate of weeks. Fantasy football this year, a little different than some of the other things we have looked at so far in this series. They play the Chicago Bears in week 17. So that means in that pivotal championship week, finals week in Best Ball Mania 4, we are going to want to make sure we have some exposure to Chicago Bears players on the other side. Best options would be Justin Fields at quarterback, particularly given his rushing upside, or DJ Moore at wide receiver. We've got the Indianapolis Colts in semifinals week, so a couple of options there that we can find throughout the board. And the Carolina Panthers in week 15 are the final playoff week correlation teams we should be looking for with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, when we start a draft out of the 10 hole and Bijan is our first round pick, we're going to be a little light at wide receiver. I do like taking two of the best available wide receivers in the next couple of rounds here. I selected, for the purpose of this mock, Chris Olave and Amari Cooper in rounds 2 and 3. Chris Olave, a division rival of Bijan Robinson, they'll play 2 times a year. It's not the only reason I'm interested in him here, though. Amari Cooper, Cleveland Browns, it doesn't seem like there's an immediate correlation with Amari Cooper here. However, if we go over to the Best Ball Mania Stack Seeker available on OccupyFantasy.com, and we add in the Week 17 opponent from the Falcons, the Chicago Bears, we see that the Bears have a Cleveland Browns matchup in Week 15. So that is where the Amari Cooper interest comes from primarily here. Olave's Saints, we want to see them in the Stack Seeker to see which other teams we're interested in. And of course, Amari Cooper's Cleveland Browns. Looking at the New Orleans Saints, we have opportunity with the Buccaneers in Week 17. We should prioritize. Looking at Amari Cooper's Cleveland Browns, we have the New York Jets that we can prioritize. And in the rest of my build here in the first 8 rounds from the 10 hole, I do like reaching a little bit for Justin Fields to get that correlation with Bijan Robinson. This is one of the only skinny pairings I'm super comfortable with because of Justin Fields' rushing upside in the Bears offense. One of the only quarterbacks I'm okay with not necessarily getting a pass catcher from his team with him. Obviously, we'll do it if it falls to us. But the way the draft goes, it's very, very hard to get both Fields and DJ Moore on your roster from this end of the draft board. So I do think it's an either-or situation. There's a chance Fields could fall to your 5th round selection, so that is certainly something that could also play out for you at this draft slot. Got both Marquise Brown and James Conner from the Arizona Cardinals mapped in rounds 5 and 8 respectively on this roster. I am interested in the Arizona exposure because with Fields as my primary quarterback, we have an Arizona Cardinals matchup in semifinals week 16 for the Chicago Bears. So if you can do that and corner the market on the key assets on the Arizona offense, you have set yourself up pretty well for some game stacks in each of the playoff weeks with Justin Fields, Cleveland Browns in Week 15, Amari Cooper, the Arizona Cardinals in Week 16 with Brown and Conner, and obviously Bijan in round 17 with the Atlanta Falcons. Darren Waller in the 7th round, a early tight end selection. New York Giants have some correlation in Week 15 with Chris Olave, and Mike Evans in round 6 is that Week 17 correlation with Chris Olave's Saints. Have an opportunity in the second half of this draft, didn't map it out here, to consider plays like Derek Carr stacked with Chris Olave, and obviously Baker Mayfield if you think he's going to be the primary quarterback for the Buccaneers with Mike Evans, Daniel Jones with Darren Waller as well. So lots of opportunity for a backup quarterback with Justin Fields. I do think mentally you should gear yourself up to not select a second quarterback here until around round 10 or later, just because with this type of construction, you are wagering on Fields being the best quarterback to own in the early portion of the draft, so you might as well build accordingly. That's enough on how I'm looking at the 10 hole at this time. The number 11 pick, if you want to look back at the live stream that I did on the channel with Chuck on Sunday, June 18th, I did actually get this exact start in the first 2 rounds on my roster. From the 11 hole, the consensus pick right now is CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have a matchup with the Detroit Lions in Week 17, probably one of the better game environments that we should be looking to get exposure to in general, but especially here from the 11 hole, because there's a pretty good chance that we can get Amon-Ra St. Brown in round 2 at pick number 14. So we pull in the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions into the Stack Seeker and see what the other opportunities we should be considering are. The Dallas Cowboys have matchups with the Buffalo Bills in Week 15 and the Miami Dolphins in Week 16, a couple of AFC East opponents. And the Detroit Lions have the Denver Broncos in Week 15 and the Minnesota Vikings in Week 16. So those are some of the other options that are on the board here. I do love getting Jahmyr Gibbs on Amon-Ra St. Brown rosters in best ball. So from the 11th pick in round 4, that is primarily where the Jahmyr Gibbs selection has come for me. In the 3rd round, this is where I'm willing to start considering getting at least one running back to get somewhat of a high upside asset on my roster at this important position. So I did map Najee Harris here to pick 35. Harris is the most likely running back to still be available because the Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall group all go by around pick 30 typically. So in this range, it's Najee Harris, Travis Etienne from the Jaguars, and Jahmyr Gibbs from our Detroit Lions here on this build that are most likely to be available. We take the best running back available by ADP in Najee, and then that gets us some interest in a Seattle wide receiver at the 5-6 turn. Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN, or Tyler Lockett, the most likely to be available here. Alexander Mattison in the 6th round. There is correlation with the Minnesota Vikings for Detroit in Week 16, so that is why I was interested in him in this mock draft. I did do a draft with Chuck on the channel here. You can actually watch that back. It was the live stream on Sunday, June 18th, where I built this a little bit of a different way. I did not take Najee in round 3. I actually opted to get some wide receiver correlation in Week 15 with Detroit, with Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos. And I took the Pittsburgh running back instead late with Jaylen Warren instead of Najee Harris, and still got some Seattle correlation in round 6 with Tyler Lockett. So just a practical example of how there's many different ways to get to these correlations that we are talking about in these videos. KJ Osborne super late for Minnesota correlation in Week 16 with the Detroit Lions as well. Brandon Cooks in the 7th round, if he's still available at pick 83, I would be more than happy to lock him in. And then obviously Dak Prescott at the 9-10 turn if he is still there. If I miss on Dak and Cooks, I am more than okay, like I did in this team that I drafted on stream, with reaching a little bit for Jared Goff at pick 110 to make sure I lock down the Detroit Lions side of that Detroit and Dallas game stack in Week 17. From the last pick in the draft, the 12th slot, I have mapped Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown as my favorite start. Garrett Wilson is now the consensus last first-round pick available. By ADP, goes 12.8 overall as of today, June 20th. The player that's most likely to go in round 2 at pick number 13 is actually Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. I am straight up going to Amon-Ra St. Brown because I like Amon-Ra St. Brown better than Adams for this upcoming season. So that's the explanation for skipping out on Davante Adams. If you select Davante Adams here at the end of the draft, it is in line with the consensus. Just make sure you look at some of the correlations for the Raiders when you build your roster that way. I did not do that here. When we get Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown to start, obviously we know about the Denver Broncos, Minnesota Vikings, and the Dallas Cowboys. Talked about that from the 11th spot. When we look at the New York Jets, we have the Miami Dolphins in Week 15, Washington Commanders in Week 16, and of course the Cleveland Browns in Week 17. So my favorite way to get exposure to the Cleveland Browns when the draft comes back around to us, if he is still available, is wide receiver 1, Amari Cooper. A little behind his average draft position now. Amari Cooper tends to go around pick 34. So it's probably a little less than a 50% chance that Cooper is still available for you at pick 36. But from the perspective of ideal start, that's the player that we want here. If we miss on Amari Cooper for week 17 correlation with Garrett Wilson, there should still be opportunities with players like Elijah Moore at wide receiver. He goes around pick 87. We've got David Njoku at tight end. He goes around pick 103. So those are some spots that we could look to get that week 17 correlation with Garrett Wilson. And of course, we already know about Dallas with Amon-Ra St. Brown. For the purpose of this mock, I have anticipated that Amari falls to us. And just like pick 11, I am interested in going with the next best running back available after starting with 3 wide receivers, Najee Harris, and anticipating some correlation with the Seattle wide receivers when the draft comes back around in round 5-6 with either of JSN or Tyler Lockett in this spot. So you can do whatever you want from picks 6 through 8 to maximize your correlation with the players on this team. Another option, obviously I've mapped out getting Aaron Rodgers, and my favorite late round selection in the entire draft board, Mecole Hardman, who I think will be the primary slot receiver for Aaron Rodgers this year, goes very, very, very late. And you've got a very nice 3-1 game stack for Cleveland and the New York Jets in week 17 this way. But an alternative path here is right at round 7 and 8. That is where Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns tends to go. So he should be available in that range for you. And you get Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, and you can find a spot. Maybe you could go Watson and Elijah Moore here back to back and get your 3 Cleveland players. You could consider David Njoku if he falls to 108, 109 here in the 9th and 10th rounds. You could consider Donovan Peoples-Jones, who goes around pick 160. So that would be around round 13, 14 for another secondary Cleveland wide receiver. So there are a lot of ways to stack Cleveland and New York in week 17. So that's why I think it's actually a pretty interesting start here at the top of the board. And obviously you can deploy the strategies we looked at in the 11th spot as well with Dallas and Detroit if you get Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. Antonio Gibson in the 9th round from the Washington Commanders. We have week 16 correlation with Garrett Wilson in the semifinals week. So if we are going to go the route of stacking Aaron Rodgers with Garrett Wilson and grabbing another Jets player like Mecole Hardman late, he's there as one of the options we can consider. Jeff Wilson from the Miami Dolphins. He does go the latest of the 3-headed monster at running back in drafts right now. I'm talking about Devin Achane, Raheem Mostert, and Jeff Wilson. A little bit of an ambiguous backfield for the Miami Dolphins, but we have an opportunity to get Wilson right at cost here in the 15th round if he's the one that we want to back here. And we want to do that because there is week 15 correlation with the Miami Dolphins for the New York Jets in the first round of the fantasy playoffs this year. Not necessarily married to the idea of Wilson specifically, just the idea of getting correlation with the Dolphins in our draft. And with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle going in the first 2 rounds, there's no high upside Dolphins that we're going to get. So our best shot at some correlation is to take a risk with one of the Dolphin running backs when we build this particular way. That's going to tie a bow around this series. We have 4 videos on the channel here for you on how to draft from any of the starting slots on the board in Best Ball Mania 4. There is no opportunity to edit your roster after you draft the team. That is why we are looking at these correlations so heavily up front. That is why in a format like this, we're okay with going very heavy at wide receiver at the beginning of the draft because we don't have to worry about who the best scorers are. They're just automatically going to start for us every single week based off of what the results are. So you can build a best ball roster a little differently than you would for any other type of traditional fantasy league that you play in. That's what makes this format so fun and engaging. We will be back with another live stream this weekend for you, so keep an eye out for the schedule on that. We're looking forward to giving you more Best Ball live streams throughout the rest of Best Ball Summer here. It is officially here. If you want more Best Ball content and you haven't done any of these things already while watching this video here, please give us a thumbs up on the video. Lets us know that you want to see some more strategy videos on the channel. I'll try to roll some more out in the month of July for you. We will have a live stream this weekend and a couple more next week as well. We're giving you 3 videos a week on this channel all summer long. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel to get notified when those get scheduled and announced. Thank you once again for watching this video, and good luck in Best Ball Mania 4. We'll talk to you next time.